Hey guys, this is Brian. Just got out of class at Brooklyn College, and I figured I'd share something that I learned today. I watched a movie called King Corn, and before I go home, I'll tell you a little bit about the movie, alright? So, basically, I learned about this big change in the country where they decided to go from an agriculture of cutback for the corn to, in 1973, we got plenty of food. Changing the philosophy from curtailment, which is cutting back, to expansion. Okay, nowadays a farmer said in the movie, farms need to be pretty big size or they'll be squeezed out. This is a guy who's part of a family-owned farm, so he's got tons of acres. Normally, it's not rare for them to have 1,000 acres at least. Nowadays, there's been a big revolution, having the tractor, but also even better methods of growing corn, which has made corn cheap. 31,000 kernels to the acre. It took these guys that didn't even know what they're doing. In the movie, it showed these gentlemen who both had their family roots in Iowa. Great-grandparents were there growing corn or doing something having to do with corn. One of them was Melvin Green, who helped build the old reliable tractor. Like I mentioned, this lessened the workload. And nowadays, they were able to plant these kernels, like I said, 31,000 to the acre, which is a whole lot of corn to the acre. And it only took them 18 minutes. So, it's very efficient. But there are going to be consequences of this. The good thing about getting it done in big acres and these giant farms is that there's less turning around, right? Government will subsidize for every acre that you have. They'll give you $28. So, funny line in the movie, the guy was like, I wish we did 1,000 acres. Regardless of what they grow, they're going to get 28,000. Wait, does that make sense? Yeah, 28,000. No, it doesn't make sense, but that's what we have. And you'll see even more why it doesn't make sense, because of the health consequences that we're going to talk about. All right, Michael Pollan, he's a good guy for natural food, promoting natural food. He said, these kernels have been engineered to increase yield, so they're naturally able to, what's the word? Unnaturally have an unnatural ability to grow in close proximity to each other. Okay, talks about, they've been engineered in a lab to be able to do this, which is great. Okay, but he didn't like this change that this guy named Earl Butt. Michael Pollan talked about Earl Butt, and Earl Butt is actually shown in the movie. He's the guy that in the 1970s said, we're going to change the laws so that, we stop paying people to not grow it. Actually, not growing it was good because it kept the price of corn at a reasonable level. But now that corn is so cheap, they have to grow a lot. Okay? But they changed the laws, and they said, we're not going to pay you to not grow it anymore. We want you to expand. Okay, and we do make this product very well. Got to give it to these corn growers. 32-row planters, the tractor, and sprayers, 90-foot span. New records being set every year for corn crops. Okay, but what are we doing with this corn? 32 is exported or turned into ethanol. Okay, fair enough. Ethanol can be changed into all sorts of things. 20%, nearly 20%, the sweetener, high fructose corn syrup, is the big one. More than a half of the corn, of all corn, will be fed to animals. So we're getting plenty of these corn-fed animals, which turns into corn-fed beef. And so, once again, the meat is corn-fed meat, sent to a packing plant, okay? When they're still young calves, these cows are sent there. Grasslands have been changed to cornfields because these cattle are not eating the grass. Actually, the grass-fed is so much better. Besides, the confinement nowadays that are occurring, they do this because they find that they grow faster if they're confined. But these animals that are confined and corn-fed last no longer than 140 days because they begin stomach problems, acidosis, so they're fed antibiotics which help combat acidosis and the conditions of confinement, like excessive waste and bacteria. So they're given these antibiotics to deal with these conditions. But once again, this is becoming part of our meat. And not only that, but the grass-fed beef is so much better. The grass-fed has 1.3 grams of saturated fat compared to 9 grams of saturated, I guess is per serving. The corn-fed has so much more saturated fat, and you're looking at a burger now. 65% of the calories come from fat. That makes you think, before you order that next burger. 65%, especially if you're trying to do a low-fat diet. Don't go there. In the last 30 years, only corn-fed beef. That's probably, beef. All the beef that you've ever had has probably been corn-fed. If you were born in the last 30 years. Grass-fed beef is more expensive, and Americans demand cheap food, so that grass-fed beef is not being provided because it's not in demand. High fructose corn syrup, once again, it used to be expensive, but that was before 1970. After the 1973, that guy changed the rules a little bit, and now that corn is cheap. Fructose syrup is cheap, and by the 80s, right away, by the 1980s, they took over half the market of the sweeteners, these high fructose corn syrup people. In the last 30 years, table sugar is down 20%. People are increasing their consumption of sweeteners, but it's gone up by 30%, largely due to high fructose corn syrup. Nutritional value of corn, it used to be much higher nutritional value, came from Mexico, the one they're using, but they bred it and made it into one with increased yield, big endosperm, high starch content, but less nutrients. Okay, what's in that kernel is the endosperm, a lot of starch, but not many nutrients. 139 million gallons of high fructose corn syrup sugar being consumed in soda. I guess that's per year. I think in New York. No, in Brooklyn. They said in Brooklyn. So where I am, Brooklyn College, everyone around there drinking a lot of soda. They showed on the movie this guy from Brooklyn. Everybody in his family had diabetes. His mother, his brother, his grandma, grandparents, Everybody had diabetes. And, it's genetic, yes. But also, the guy had diabetes and he admitted to drinking like 2 liters of soda every day. So, he did talk about how he stopped and he lost like a third of his weight. That's a whole lot. 'Cause, he was a big dude. Not sure if he lost a third. But 1 in 8 New Yorkers have diabetes. Ridiculous. Many are undiagnosed. Drinking one soda doubles the risk of type 2 diabetes. That's what the guy had. The guy talked about how we rarely think about what we are putting into our system. All those saturated fats, the high fat content, the antibiotics. If not for the government support, however, this may not be occurring in our society. The subsidies help make the Happy Meals cheap, the movie said. Earl Butz tried to defend himself. He said, we feed ourselves with only 15 to 16% of our take-home pay. We could spend it on something else. We're in the land of plenty right now. And we spend less on food than any generation in history. Okay, well, that was probably before recession because food prices are being jacked up. But I mean, you gotta give the guy a little break coming from where he's coming from. His parents had to work their butts off to produce the crop. He's happy that we're able to produce such high numbers, record numbers, like I said. But it's leading to a lot of bad problems. The metabolic problems like diabetes, what I said, obesity. The meat is cheap, that's why people buy it. But all these things made with the artificial sweetener, which, listen, I love sweets. Don't get me wrong. But I'm not going to have high fructose corn syrup if I know it leads to all these genetic, problems and metabolic disorders, Even the farmers, they don't even like the way it's going. The larger and larger, they need to make it larger and larger to keep up. That's the direction, Unfortunately, small guys are being pushed out. And there needs to be some change. There needs to be people need to rise up, and say that the corporations that are, getting these politicians to pass these laws for subsidies, they need to be stopped. They need to be confronted. And, it's great that we're able to eat a little cheaper with some of the, the meat, but we have to find a balance, We have to find a way to also make food cheap that is healthy, which is even more important. It makes more sense. Grass-fed beef is great. Organic food, I'm not going to say is great all the time. It's great for pregnant women. I'm not going to pay the price for organic food all the time. But we can demand it. We can demand that it's made cheaper. I work in a fish market. People that want the cheap fish, I give it to them. I find them a way to get it for them. So that's what we need to do. We need to look out for each other and keep everybody healthy. Keep our friends healthy, and be upfront about the problems in this country, and not be afraid to talk about it. So that's all I have to say about that. So go out there, watch the film King Corn. Interesting movie, all right? A lot of good facts in there to spread around. So stay good, guys. Stay healthy.